Hey, it's you, me on me on MMA time. God, I botched that one. We're not doing a retake. We're just gonna enjoy that. Anyways, it's UFC on ABC time. If I may detour for a hot second here, when will MMA fans learn the idea that Europeans generally speak English? Because there's a debate going on right now. A bunch of MMA journalists and whatever, and predominantly English speaking people are talking about the trash talk of Cedric Doumbé or Doumbé. I think it's Doumbé. I've heard it pronounced a number of different ways by commentators, so it's absolutely ruined me to like knowing how to say it. There is a French Canadian hockey player who spells his name the same way, and it's Doumbé. So I'm going with Doumbé. But anyways, there's a lot of talk about like his star power, and one of the things being focused on is his witty repertoire, trash talk, etc. in comparison to Israel Adesanya, and how he probably could be a bigger star, assuming he can win fights, which is an assumption. But he's a better kickboxer and a even louder personality than Adesanya. And recently he refused a UFC contract for 20K. This is just yet another saga of the UFC letting somebody go to continue to squeeze every penny. And people are like, well, no, but if he spoke English, they would have probably signed him. He just does. Like, why do you think predominantly English-speaking pundits, use that term, are talking about his trash talk? You think it's because they speak fluent French, or they've worked out, or they've run through the translator or whatever? No, it's he's a Frenchman. I think he's actually born in Cameroon, if I'm not mistaken. But, a Frenchman. And if you're a French athlete, you generally learn English because, tapping into the English-speaking marketplace is a big deal. And, that's pretty normal. So I don't know. That's kind of your random take of the day. I know as MMA fans, we're used to like the foreigner not speaking English because we get a lot of our, biggest stars from Brazil and Eastern Europe via Russia predominantly. And they don't speak English, generally speaking, for a while anyways. But if you're particularly someone who's not like, it's not like Doumbé is like super young or anything. He's had a long career. Let me just. How long has he been active? Yeah, it is Cameroon actually he's born in, so I was right about that. Let's see here. 30 years old. Started fighting 2013. So yeah, he's been at this for a decade, basically. At least according to Wikipedia. Might even be longer than that. I don't know. Only 4 MMA fights. But if the argument is that he doesn't have star power, if the argument is he'll lose fights, I guess that's one thing. But if the argument is he doesn't have star power, dude's got a better gift to gab and a better kickboxing resume and ability than Israel Adesanya or Alex Pereira. So I don't see why not. And no, I mean this is just the UFC doing what the UFC does realistically ever since they stopped having any real opposition in the marketplace, and particularly since the ESPN deal is we don't need the star, we're not going to pay for the star. If the star wants to work for 20K apparently, we're game for that, but any more than that, we're not going to do that. And it's just a money decision. There's nothing stopping them from doing this because the levers that have that require stars are kind of gone. There's not a consistent number 2. Like it or not, the biggest opposition in terms of MMA market share probably is PFL, and I don't think PFL is ever going to be a rival to the UFC. Bellator has long ago proven not to be. I guess one has that upside, but not really. They're like tremendously in the red. But the Amazon Prime deal might do something. I don't know. But like, I guess what I'm saying at the end of the day here is that the whole monopoly and the UFC not having a business reason to pay fighters also means we don't get as much quality fights. It means a UFC champion walks out the door. It means they don't sign a world-class kickboxer because they want money. And it means that we get cards like the one I'm about to break down as fans. And it means the fighters get less money, which is not good. Anyways, UFC on ABC 4, Rozenstruik versus Jailton Almeida. Jailtown. coming to you live this weekend. Is this a good card? Not really. It is probably better than the last couple of fight night offerings, to be honest, because we have a main event that does have title implications. We have a co-main event that does have title implications, although the fact that Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker actually legitimately has title implications is kind of sad, because Smith should have essentially just kind of fallen out of favor and not aged out necessarily, because he's only 34 years old, I do believe. But, after getting a title shot, getting dominated again by Glover, getting dominated again by Alexander Rakic, you would think that the division just kind of would have left him behind, and somehow it hasn't. And Johnny Walker, you would think, with his lack of durability and self-destructiveness, would have just been a flash in the pan and been gone, and yet here we are. Kind of sad. Then you got Daniel Rodriguez, Ian Garry. That's a pretty reasonable fight. Carlos Ulberg versus Ior Patara. I guess on paper is a battle of two prospects. I don't think highly of Patara. Then you have veteran fights with Tim Means, Alex Morono, Matt Brown, Court McGee. Carl Williams is an interesting prospect. He's on the card. It's about it, really. The rest is kind of just filler. Or fights that are, for one reason or another, not super intriguing. So that's better, but there's no must-see fight here. The big upside, I guess, is that Ian Garry comes out and really proves me wrong that he's actually a future champion or something. Or at the very least, we get a really good fight between him and Daniel Rodriguez. Because I don't actually think the main or the co-main are going to be amazing fights. So for an ABC card, which last I checked, the UFC was trying to make the ABC cards pretty good. I mean, it's an auxiliary source. My understanding is they get paid more for them than ESPN Plus cards. You would think that you would want a better card than this, but alas, here we are. Let's get into the fights here. Main event, Jailton Almeida versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Jailton Almeida. Very true outcome fight. There's not much to really break down here, unfortunately, because at the end of the day, Almeida is a smaller fighter. He's coming up from 205, obviously, but ironically taller. Rozenstruik hits really, really hard. Big, powerful man. Not a great striker by any means. I'm seeing that every time he fights, coming around, people talk about how good of a striker Jairzinho Rozenstruik is. And I've never really been sold that he actually is. He's good at applying his power. He's kind of like an upgraded version of Derek Lewis in that regard, in the sense that he is a better striker than Lewis, applies power, but at the same time probably actually isn't as good of a counter wrestler and isn't as comfortable on the ground. Because to be clear, Derek Lewis, despite not being a very good grappler, is exceedingly comfortable, and a while ago came to peace with the idea that he's going to end up on his back and he just has to chill and wait for the opportunity to hit you with something massive. And it's kind of amazing in that regard. I don't think Rozenstruik is there. We haven't seen a lot of Rozenstruik on the ground. He's actually been allowed to strike with people for the most part, which is weird, because the guy has been in the UFC for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fights. And his losses are, Curtis Blades did out wrestle him. But he got outstruck by Gon and got finished by Volkov and Ngannou. But ironically, very little else has actually been taking him to the ground. He got to predominantly stand with Overeem, with Arlovsky, both of whom probably should have grappled him. He got to knock out Alan Crowder really quickly, Junior Albini, Chris Daukaus, in his most recent fight, 23-second knockout. So obviously, I think I've more than outlined how I think Rozenstruik wins the fight, which is connect with a really, really hard shot and put Jailton Almeida down. And how Jailton wins this fight is Jailton Almeida is actually, while being a very, very narrow takedown artist, as in he doesn't do a lot of things, but what he does very, very well. And he'll, probably get to do that. He'll probably get to take Rozenstruik down, hold him down, go for the back. He's an amazing back take artist for heavyweight or for 205. Doesn't matter which weight class he fights at. Very good, very smooth back operator. and he'll probably choke him out. And that's what I'm going with. But to be clear, Rozenstruik knocking anyone on the planet, including like John Jones, out, would not actually surprise me. He does have that kind of nuclear option to go with. Who was Joe Rogan talking about when he like overutilized nuclear option? Was it Derek Lewis? It might have been Derek Lewis. But anyways, he's got that nuclear option to just, terminate somebody. But I'm going with Almeida. He's, got a decent chin. He's not glass jawed by any means. He does move his head, and I've got him by submission. He is a bigger favorite than I think he should be. Minus 500 to minus 590 against Rozenstruik just feels very, very iffy. I don't know how you could bet on that. And I've gotten crap on this before. People are like, well, if you think the guy's going to win, then how can you think he's too big of a favorite? Well, when I stop having any appeal in betting money on him is when he's too big of a favorite, in my opinion. That would be the answer. At plus 360 to plus 400, I'd be tempted to put a little bit on Rozenstruik. So there you go. Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker. This is another fight that feels very, very similar to a past fight, which was Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spawn. And it's not just that Ryan Spawn and Johnny Walker are tall, black individuals. It's because they fight not the same, to be clear. They have different techniques, they have different approaches, and so on. But what they're good at, what they're dangerous at, is kind of the same thing. They're both very dangerous in chaotic experiences. They're both very dynamic, lethal strikers and grapplers, actually, specifically Spawn. Spawn is a very dangerous front headlock guy. But they're also both fragile, and they don't really have a great grasp of defense. They are incredibly hittable. When they're dangerous is also when they are in the most danger of getting finished, which is why the fight between Johnny Walker and Ryan Spawn went the way that it did. And Anthony Smith won that. I'm not a huge believer in Anthony Smith. To be clear, I have never been a huge believer in Anthony Smith. I like his podcast. I like listening to him talk. He's got a phenomenal mind for the sport. But I've never been a big believer on just like actually what I see. He generally beats fighters with tremendous flaws, which you could probably see where I'm going with this, and loses to people who don't have grotesque, horrendous openings. And I am taking him to win here by, I don't know if it'll be a TKO or a submission. Both are honestly very, very possible. Like, the problem for Johnny Walker is Johnny Walker knows what's wrong with his game. And I credit him for that. He's actually tried to fix some things. The problem is I think he made absolutely the wrong choices about where to go to get those fixes. Because he went to SBG Ireland. And I don't have a high regard for John Kavanagh and SBG Ireland. I just don't. Yes, they produced Conor McGregor. And they produced some other pretty reasonable fighters. Like some other solid, at least for what they could be, fighters have come out of that gym. Don't get me wrong. But realistically, if you have elite level athleticism and you're looking to learn to become a dangerous striker and actually be a safe striker, there are just way better places to go. And since Johnny Walker went to SBG Ireland, we have seen this safer Johnny Walker, which is not a bad thing, but it's a completely neutered Johnny Walker. It's a non-dangerous Johnny Walker who doesn't fight at enough of a pace or with enough form and simplified techniques or a good enough jab, a good enough low kicking game, whatever it is, whatever you're going to fill that gap that your safety is creating with, he doesn't have it. Maybe this is the fight where he finally does have it, but like his two wins against Ian Garry and Paul Craig were both, he did beat Garry, right? I'm right on that, right? Johnny Walker. Yeah, it was Garry. Yeah, he rear naked choked Garry in the first round and he knocked out Paul Craig. Were when the old him came out against fighters who also self-destruct and who don't really have a multi-layered attack and who are very one-dimensional and have really one thing to worry about. And in both cases, it was grappling. Smith has that multi-layered attack. So if Walker does insist, because he is the longer, he is the taller guy, he is the faster guy, he can probably stay safe. I think if he insists on trying to fight a safe game, he just gets chewed up and loses a decision or even gets stopped still by Smith, because Smith is way better at that game. Or he goes crazy and gets finished. And obviously, he could finish Smith too, because like Smith's durability is weird, in that it comes and it goes. This is a guy who got injured by a relatively simple exchange by like Magomed Ankalaev last time out, but like at the same time, weathered the storm from Ryan Spawn, and like as much as he did get finished in the 5th round by Glover Teixeira, like somehow remained incredibly durable throughout, getting his ass completely kicked. But like at the same time is also a guy who who looks like he's breaking a lot of the time. I don't know. It's a weird, bizarre durability for Anthony Smith. But so could Walker finish him? Yeah, absolutely. Walker can always finish someone. Like Walker fits into the Rozenstruik mold of, I ain't gonna be surprised if he finishes anybody, because he can be singularly violently dangerous. But by the same token, Smith, hard to finish despite being semi-easy to hurt. And, way deeper, way more diverse of a fighter. Johnny Walker going through a crisis of who he is, honestly. And, Smith to win. The betting line on this one is completely even. It's like -110 across the board. Slight variances depending on the book you're looking at. But it is a pick 'em fight, and I'd be tempted to put some money on Smith. I haven't put my bets down yet, but that is a candidate. That's a candidate. Whereas like Almeida is just too much of a favorite. Daniel Rodriguez, Ian Machado, Garry. Interesting that they have reach parity despite Garry being taller and just seeming way longer. I don't know. It's a weird reach moment there. Not a huge believer in either guy. Wasn't a huge believer when they brought Rodriguez in. He's already exceeded my expectations. He just feels like kind of a really, really bare bones fighter. Like, good volume, occasionally good jab. Like his boxing in flashes looks really good. He'll throw low kicks and stuff. He can grapple. He's not just a kickboxer. But he also makes like some terrible decisions over the course of fights and doesn't really have any kind of like lethality to him, which is a problem if you're, I guess it's not. He keeps winning, but it's a problem convincing myself in my brain that there's enough like moments he can dominate. He also should be on a 3-fight losing streak, in my opinion, because I thought he lost to the Leech, and of course he lost to Neil Magny. Oh no, he beat Kevin Lee. Right. 2-fight losing streak, anyways. Personally, I think. And in Garry, you have a guy that, like, maybe it's just the completely unoriginal fact that he came in and literally would rip off Conor McGregor's gimmick. It's kind of weird that when he tries to be himself, I actually like him. But there's a lot of tried to force into being the next Conor McGregor into his personality. And as a fighter, I just haven't got it. I'm not saying he's bad. I want to make that quite clear. He's tall, he's long, he's a skilled striker. There are layers to his game. There is presumably a reasonably solid grappling game, although I haven't seen a ton of it. And it's just more that like people are like, Ian Machado Garry is the future, not just because of his nickname, but because like he'll be a future champion. He'll be the next Irish champion. And I'm just like, I don't see it. I really, really don't see it. Maybe this is his chance to prove me wrong. Because I am picking him here. I'm going to go out on the limb here and say, like, I'm going to buy into the hype a little bit here. I'm going to say that given a relatively narrow band of danger presented by Daniel Rodriguez, that he'll go out there and he'll be safe, probably work some kicking game, work his reach. If you can control the jab against Daniel Rodriguez, it does neutralize a lot of what he wants to do. And Machado or Garry has all the physical requirements to do that. So I'm going to go with Ian Machado Garry by decision. And maybe this is the one. And in fairness to Garry, I'll be fair here for a moment. There's no one he's fought that really would convince me that he is that guy. Because you look at his run, Gabe Green is the best fighter he's beaten. Get Kenan Song, Darian Weeks, and Jordan Williams, a bunch of regional scene guys in Cage Warriors who are fine, but there's a reason none of them are really on my radar as UFC pickups in the future. The best one, I guess, would be Jack Grant, I suppose. But going to decision with Jack Grant is not exactly great. I remain open to being convinced. There you go. Gary is, I think, a prohibitive favorite here, minus 300 to minus 335. Rodriguez is plus 230 to plus 260. Pondering betting on Daniel Rodriguez. That's a bettable dog. Carlos Ulberg versus Ihor Potara, the guy who retired Shogun Rua years too late, if we're being honest. Ulberg does have an inch of height and 2 inches of reach. That's a problem for Potara because I think a lot of what Ihor Potara likes to do is range dependent. When he was cut down and made to fight close ranges against Nick Mariano, didn't really have anything, and his cardio also started to fail him. I don't think he's a super hard hitter, and I don't think he has super great cardio, super great form. I just don't think he's all that good. There are random moments every time I watch Potara fight that look very, very good. There are these condensed 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds where I'm like, that guy is actually really, really slick. Really lives up to the duelist name for that bit. And then he'll just get plotted by the most obvious punch. So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that with the proper coaching and the proper determination, we probably could make something out of Potara. There's no physical attribute of his that is completely missing. He hits hard enough, fast enough. All the physical things are okay. I just don't think he actually has the coaching to really make anything about that. Because the problems that I see from him date back to the oldest fights I can find. Where it's all right, you're still leaving this opening. You're still doing this wrong. You're still doing this thing that got you hit kind of hard by some Ukrainian can. Bit of a problem. And Carlos Ulberg, City Kickboxing, obviously good coaching. He's improved every time out. He's seemingly durable enough, has all the physical attributes. Like Potara, he ticks all the boxes of physicality while learning and closing gaps in his game. He's becoming actually a really solid pocket to outside striker. Now, I do worry about his clinch game, but Potara's not really the guy to exploit that. And it's not that big of a problem because, he did beat Nick Mariano. And I'm not using that connection because Nick Mariano beat Potara, but because he was able to more or less diffuse the clinch game and the pressure game of Nick Mariano and pick up the win. And if that's my big concern, what happens if you just kind of get marched down and you do that against a guy who does march people down and, at least for the middle of this division, does it pretty well? Well, that kind of alleviates a lot of questions. Also, the fact that he lost to Kennedy Njoku looks increasingly like less and less of a problem as Njoku does, his own work and, has made himself into a rising star in the division. Now, granted, he hasn't beaten anyone particularly good yet, beating Fabio Charant, Tafon Nchukwe, and Nick Mariano. Not a huge advantage. By the way, how do you fight 3 people whose names start with N in 4 fights in the UFC? And 2 of which have NZ combos? Well, no, Nchuku's at NC, I think. Not Nchuku. Tafon Nchukwe is an NC combination. But I don't know. That is a little bit weird. I'm going with Ulberg to win by TKO. Like I said, I just don't think Potara is all that good. It's essentially the same reason why I didn't like him fighting Shogun, because he wasn't bad enough that Shogun was going to get some kind of easy win over him. I'm not sure who you would even put in there in that case. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you're going to feed the old lion to the young cub, and you're going to do this, you should pick someone who is going to meet, like Olberg would have been like an idea. Because Olberg, I think, is something. Potara is not. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think the betting odds are with me. Yeah, Olberg is minus 400 to minus 455. Potara plus 300 to plus 370. There you go. Yeah, I got TKO Olberg. Alex Morono, Tim Means. I hate to be super, super reductive with this fight, but it really just comes down to, at 39 years old, what does Tim Means have left in the tank? He's a taller fighter. He's a longer fighter. He's a better striker. He's a more lethal grappler, although Morono, I think, is maybe the more complete, like, control grappler. He was the better athlete than Morono. Like, everything points towards Means. If these two were battling in their prime as the winner, it's just, on a 2-fight losing skid, does Tim Means still have the things that made Tim Means beyond, like, range and stuff? But, like, going to split decision with Max Griffin, pretty impressive. Losing to Kevin Holland while winning most of the fight, not really a big problem. And this is way more like the Nicholas Dalby fight than either of those. So I'm going to go with Tim Means, but like the chance that Tim Means just comes out here, and Morono, who I do really like, Morono is a great game planner and makes the absolute most of what physicality he has. It's just that he has very little of it. Like if Means comes out here and looks a little flat, a little bit done, a little bit washed, a little bit tired, Morono will beat him, because Morono's not going to like make horrible mistakes. Like that's his thing. His thing is to go out there and fight you really hard and really smart, outside of randomly Chaos Williams, and make you work really, really hard. So if Means doesn't have the cardio left anymore, it Means doesn't have quite the speed left anymore, Morono can take this. But I'm going to say that Tim Means is only losing to guys who have big physical X factors over him, and guys like Holland and Griffin. You do not have that with Morono. So yeah, I'm saying he's not that done yet. And I will be betting on Tim Means because he's a plus 172 to plus 200 underdog right now, and that's enough. Morono at minus 210, 240 is too much. Means by decision, though. Morono's tough. He doesn't finish much. Matt Brown, Court McGee, battle of the zombies. Two guys who have legally been dead in their lives. I hate to be overly reductive with this fight as well, but like when you have two fighters who have a combined age of 80, we kind of have to talk about who has something left, because both of these guys have lost something that defined their success in the UFC. Matt Brown does not seem to have the ability to go to war anymore. Doesn't have the cardio. He slows down. He can't fight at that high volume anymore. He seems to know it. He's trying to develop a more conservative style, a more counter-based style as well. And that's cool, but he is also 42. Court McGee has lost his durability. Things that used to hurt him, used to not hurt him, are hurting him. He's still winning some fights. Beat Claudio Silva, beat Rahimi's Brahimov, but those are both one-dimensional grapplers. He hasn't beat a guy with a reasonable striking game since 2018. That was Alex Garcia, who is another guy who really has developed this weird like power striking game that needs to go into grappling for some reason. Like he's actually kind of the great failing of TriStar, because Alex Garcia, I think, should have been something, and TriStar failed to turn him into something. They tried to turn him into GSP, basically. And the problem is, if you try to become GSP, well, there's a lot of Freddie Roach involved in that. There's a lot of going outside the bubble to find your training, and there's a lot of athletic ability. And it doesn't really work for most people. And that was the problem for Garcia. But anyways, enough about Alex Garcia. I don't know what this fight looks like. McGee still seems to be able to go to war and put on a pace on somebody. Brown doesn't. But at the same time, McGee seems to be very, very hurtable. I'm going to go with Matt Brown to win by TKO or decision. Hurt him badly or whatever. Like, he still seems incredibly lethal. And McGee just seems fragile. But I don't know. I'm rooting for both guys. I'm hoping they go out there and regardless of who wins, they both just look fine. That we don't get Ed Herman versus Zach Cummins, basically, where Ed Herman looks so damn dumb, or so damn done, not dumb, done, like past his best before date. And then they both retire. Although, to be honest, I would not mind if this is a double retirement fight. These are two guys that I've enjoyed the career of. I salute them as guys who have been absolute heroes in this game. But and if this is their final fight, my God, that's a phenomenal matchup. Like that is the retirement fight. But I have no idea if either of them intend to. So I don't know. We can hope, I guess. Odds. Court McGee is the favorite at minus 210 to minus 235. Matt Brown plus 175 to plus 200. I am betting on Brown. I get that Brown is the older guy. He's 42 to 38 for McGee. But ironically, he seems to have more in the tank, although less cardio. I already broke down the heavyweight bout between Carl Williams and Chase Sherman before. Like, this was supposed to happen, and then it got, I think Sherman ended up pulling out with illness. I'm going with Carl Williams again. Do I have questions about his cardio? Yeah, he's incredibly inefficient. Doesn't look like he has the deepest cardio well to begin with, but he has good takedowns. He has high amplitude takedowns. He hurts people. Chase Sherman is a guy who I'm probably never going to pick again because he doesn't look like he in any way enjoys the process of preparing for the fights or being in there. I don't know why he is. He's on my list with like Jamie Pickett. Although the only difference with Chase Sherman is there was a time when Chase Sherman seemed to be enjoying fights. He's not anymore. He's a one-dimensional skill set of like okay boxing, and that's kind of about it. I have Williams submitting him and getting his first submission win. He's a big favorite at minus 400 to minus 450. That's not really bettable, although it probably makes sense. And Sherman plus 300 plus 350. There you go. That's one of two fights that's just a complete rebooking. Cody Stamann versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. Silva is an inch taller and he's a lot longer, but that's nothing new for Cody Stamann. Why do I always get Corey Sandhagen and Cody Stamann mixed up as to which one's Corey and which one's Cody? Anyways, Stamann, there we go. We'll just go last name. He's a very good fighter. He's actually, I would say he's the better fighter of these two, technically speaking. He has good form as a striker. He mixes his wrestling in well. He scrambles very well. He grapples pretty well. He's a safe guy. He can work on the counter very, very effectively, and he seems to be fairly durable. Despite the fact that he looks like a really, really good athlete, though, for bantamweight, he's just not. In other weight classes, he would be actually, fairly okay, but at bantamweight, he tends to be a little bit slower, a little bit less explosive, a little bit less powerful than his opponent, and Douglas Silva de Andrade is the walking poster boy for that exact thing. Dude is a physical freak with incredibly bad coaching and habits. It's the complete opposite. It is literally the athlete with a non-functional game, if we're being entirely honest, versus the non-athlete with a very functional game. The tiebreaker essentially just comes down to I didn't think Stamann looked very, very good in his last fight. I did think he won. There were some people that thought he got a robbery decision there. I wasn't there on that. But given the matchup, I thought that there was a lot more that he could do, and he just didn't. And he looked tired at points, which is something that, wasn't the case before. How old is he? I should have looked up how old he was, but this could just be a case of him getting a little bit old. He's only 33. At 135, that's not impossible to be the decline. He is a guy who has a majority draw with Yadong Song, who's a better fighter than Silva de Andrade. He's had reasonably close fights with Merab Dvalishvili and with Jimmy Rivera. has beaten Brian Kelleher, but at the same time, and has beaten Tom Duquesnoy back when, Duquesnoy was supposed to be like the coming man. I have to go with De Silva de Andrade, I guess, because essentially the problem with Douglas De Silva de Andrade for Stamann is that he's just not a wow factor guy. And everybody that has beaten Silva de Andrade kind of is. Said Nurmagomedov, super long, talented, dynamic striker. Lerone Murphy, really good athlete who just seems to take a little bit getting going. Peter Yan, enough said. I know Peter Yan's stock is down now, but that was Peter Yan during his climb to the title. Rob Font, just a really, really good fighter. Zubair Tukhugov, very, very good athlete. And he's won this kind of matchup before against guys who are legitimately better technical fighters than him. Although, to be honest, kind of only once. It was basically Sergey Morozov. But I don't know. It does feel like this is the exact type of test that Stamann just fails because the big moments will go to De Silva de Andrade. The damage will go to De Silva de Andrade. Stamann will have a hard time invoking his control on him in the clinch or in the wrestling game and lose a decision. But I'm actually looking forward to this fight. Stamann is actually a favorite at minus 140 to minus 172, which means I'm going to be betting on the underdog at plus 120 to plus 135. Please, by the way, on this betting advice, do not feel the need to do my bets because, bet small and bet within your limits. But, it's kind of fun to put a little bit of a wager on it. The first of two fights on this card that I have just massive question marks beside because I don't know what to make of one half of them. Natan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez. Why don't I know what to do with Pete Rodriguez? Well, he crushed some cans. Not a lot of them even. Got to the UFC, got crushed by Jack Della Maddalena. That is not a problem. Maddalena. That is not a problem. Jack Della Maddalena is a very, 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 very good fighter and a big up-and-comer in the division. And then he crushed Mike Jackson. And the problem with, having beaten no one good and stopping them all in the first round is I have no idea if Pete Rodriguez is any good. Literally no idea. I don't even know if he hits that hard because no one he's finished is actually durable. I should have looked this up before. I want to say that his opponents have a terrible combined record. Okay. Roberto Pixley is doing a lot of work here, holding it up at 5-1. But 2-2, George Alea, I don't know. 0-1, Yasser Guzman. 2-3, Jose Luis Rios Nava. That's a cool name. I like that name. And then 1-1, Mike Jackson. And then Pixley, like I said. I don't know what to make of this guy. And then on the other side of the equation, I have no real faith in Natan Levy. He is the weirdest athlete I think I've seen in a long time because he looks athletic, looks the part. He looks good getting off the bus, to borrow an MMA fighting term. Or no, pardon me, it's a co-main event podcast that loves their first team getting off the bus. That's Natan Levy. He looks athletic. He looks great getting off the bus. He looks great in single shot moments where it's that's really fast and powerful and slick. And then you watch him for a minute and you go, this guy is so clumsy, so amazingly uncoordinated for a decent level athlete. Just everything just falls apart. So do I trust the guy who has beaten no one, but has at least looked dominant doing it? Or do I pick the guy who looks not remotely dominant, but has beaten, some okay fighters? Mike Breeden, Genaro Valdez. They're not terrible. They're the bottom of the barrel of the UFC, but they're not terrible. I guess I go with Levy, but I don't know what to make of this fight in any way, shape, or form. I'll go with Levy by decision. He is the minus 230 to minus 295 favorite. Rodriguez is plus 195 to plus 225. If you're going to bet on that fight, the bet is Rodriguez. But I don't know. I don't know. Watch Pete Rodriguez go out there and just bomb him. I don't know. Jiyoung Kim, Mandy Boom. This is another fight that I had broken down in the past. Essentially, this comes down to Boom is just not a good athlete. There's nothing physically impressive about her. And she kind of also fights in a way that, like, you know, kind of relies on it. Like, we talked about Levy being a confusing athlete. Levy, though, is just like a confusing athlete on like a structural level. He's just, I don't know, his genetic code is just bizarre. Bohm, it's weird because it's like you have Mandy Bohm and you turned her into what they turned her into, which is this kind of like leaping in puncher when she's at her best. I don't think that works. Not that there aren't significant problems with Jiyoung Kim. Mostly Jiyoung Kim's problem is she's going to fight anyone close. Like, there is no one that she'll dominate. No one. You could pick someone off the street and probably have a semi-close fight with Jiyoung Kim because everything she does is put at the opponent's pace and the opponent's intensity and so on. She doesn't step it up. She doesn't have that extra gear. If you remember, I was talking about Rolando Bedoya last episode and talking about how he needs to develop that extra gear that he kind of showed in the third round against Chaos Williams, but like, not really. It was more just Chaos Williams stopped being able to like kind of explode into things. It's the same thing here. It's like Kim can absolutely fight at an incredibly high pace for an entire 15 minutes. But if her opponent does it, she doesn't. And generally a takedown game to go to. She doesn't really, she's very quite one-dimensional. Even if that dimension is like kind of vast, like she can fight on the back foot, she can fight on the front foot. She can kind of box anywhere, but and she's hard to take down. Actually, relatively difficult to get down. But yeah, she'll have a close fight here with Boom, but I think she wins. I have her by decision. She is the minus 190 to minus 220 favorite. That's still bettable, to be honest. Boom is not very good. And plus 155 to plus 175 for Boom. Gabe Green, Brian Battle. This is a fun fight. Battle is 3 inches taller, 4 inches longer. I just don't trust his decision-making when it comes down to it. Like, his last fight was like, you know, I'm going to try and do... Like, he's just kind of like this weird throwback style where things don't mix together well. Like, he's got a good range striking game. He's got a good guard grappling game. He's got an okay top game. He's like, you know, he exists in all phases, but they don't really fit together. He feels very Japanese fighter. I've said this about the Japanese fighters before, where like they don't blend things, they don't shift things very, very well. Which I'm, why am I blanking on his name? Tyra has kind of finally started to break through on that. But like they used to be kind of like the thing is that like, okay, you can do all these things, but you shift through them really, really clunkily. That's Brian Battle, and he also is willing to accept bad positions a little bit. Not that that's going to hurt him because Gabe Green is predominantly a striker. I trust Gabe Green to solve the reach issue, be the more creative fighter, be the better athlete, and so on, and get the job done here. By decision, because Battle is fairly difficult to finish. Green is the favorite, minus 129 to minus 146. That's bettable. And Battle is a 104 to 115 underdog, which is also bettable, because I can totally see Battle winning this fight. Like, dude is super tall, super long. That's an interesting question for anybody to work out. Jessica Rose Clark versus the only debuting fighter on the card, Tainara Lisboa. At a women's bantamweight fight, Lisboa is an inch taller, but Clark has the reach edge. This is the other what the hell fight. And it's all about Tainara. Well, it's about both. But let's start with Tainara Lisboa because she's the bigger one in this regard. There's a bizarre hype for this girl because like people are like, hey, she fought Valentina Shevchenko in Muay Thai and her debut MMA fight was against Norma Dumont. That's amazing. Till you realize she's one of two people that Dumont ever finished and she did lose to Shevchenko. There's no shame in losing to Shevchenko. None whatsoever. But this girl has beaten, in her 5 MMA wins, a combined record of 1 win. Her 5 wins, at least coming into the fight, had 1 win. And the winner, But and not for nothing, the winner was Conceiva Oliveira, who was 1-4 coming into the fight. If I pull up the Tapologies for all of these people, you have Oliveira, who's 1-5, has not fought since. 0-2, Gloria Marl has not fought since. Leticia Ferreira has actually won a fight since facing Lisboa. Good for her. She won back in November. There you go. But she's 1-2. Deline Cyborg hasn't fought again. She's 0-1. And Mara Zuzamak, no idea. Never seen that name before. Is also 0-1. So, like, the thing is that what do you even look at those fights and base it off of? She is a Muay Thai fighter. She has the standard Muay Thai strategies, abilities, game set, and she can grapple a little bit. She's Brazilian. She's Brazilian Muay Thai. Like, she's the personification of Brazilian Muay Thai. But I have no idea if she's any good. None whatsoever. Because the level of competition she's fought, it is like Pete Rodriguez. It's just like, okay, you've dominated some people. And like in Lisboa's case, she's not even dominating. Like at least with Rodriguez, it's like you have gotten them out of there and you've destroyed them and whatever. But like with this one, it's like, okay, there's a third round finish there. There's a second round finish there. There are a couple of first round finishes, but they're relatively late. Like it's not even the dominance. And you know, what is the UFC doing here? Because you could sign the woman who beat her, Lorraine Santos, who's, you know, actually looks like a reasonably solid fighter. Like she's since beating Lisboa to move to 3-1, she's won 3 more fights. And you know, that feels like a way better one. So what are we doing here? What do we I know that the UFC is right now trying to build a women's bantamweight division and trying to do something, and I respect that. But there are better talents, or at least more proven talents out there than Lisboa. Put her on Dana White Contender Series. Like the weird thing is, like you just had Alex Serov, the guy who lost to Kamzat and then beat Phil Haas last week. You just had him have to go through Dana White Contender Series, and you're not doing this here. Like you have Dana White Contender Series. Throw the women's bantamweights on there. Throw them on there. See what sticks. Use that to develop the division. Or at least like raid decent like people. Not a 5-2 girl who's not beating anyone and is 32 years old. Like that's the other thing. Is 32. Nothing about this works. I can't help but think that it's just because she's kind of hot that they signed her. I don't know. It's a weird signing. Jessica Rose Clark has been on a bad run lately, getting armbarred by Stephanie Egger and Julia Stolarenko. The problem is not getting armbarred by them because they're both good armbar artists. The problem is that despite having all the advantages elsewhere, she put herself in the danger to be armbarred. So, does Lisboa have a good armbar? I guess becomes the question because Jessica Rose Clark is way more proven at everything. She's actually a pretty good volume boxer. She can work some kicks in. She's a pretty good grappler. Pretty good wrestler. She is pretty physical, although a little bit small for the division. Used to fight at flyweight. I can't pick against Clark. I can't. Even though she's had 2 really, really bad performances lately. But like I can't pick Lisboa because I have no idea if Lisboa is a fighter. Like the best I could do, and I couldn't find footage of it, is go back and watch a 2010 Muay Thai fight with Valentina Shevchenko. That's the best I have. I'm going with Clark by decision, but I don't know. I also picked Clark to win her last 2 fights, so what do I know? The odds are dead even, and I guess they should, but this is the weirdest fight on the card. Oh, God. Why? I don't get it. Let's see here. We got Bellator coming up in 20 hours, apparently, as of recording this. I'm not a huge fan of this card. I mean, yeah, Gegard Mousasi's on there, so I'll be watching. And Brett Primus versus Mansour Barnoui. Yes, please. Yes, please. And even Douglas Lima versus Costello Van Steenis. That's not too bad. But it falls off pretty badly after that. I'm not a believer in Tibal Goti or Ken Musa. And Denise Kielholtz is fighting someone who I don't really know, and whatever. Oliver Enkamp and Luka Paklik are fighting. They're like two weird submission guys. They might have some fun stuff that might be worth checking out. Saul Rogers is on the prelims. He's a good fighter, but yeah, it pretty much fades off after that. It is your standard European offering from Bellator, which is not very good. And KSW 82 is also coming up. Nothing really to get excited about there. It's not bad. There are some good action fights there. It's definitely worth checking out if you got nothing better to do. But there's no one that I'm like, there's no one on the card that I'm like, you need to see this guy. You need to see this person. It's just your typical, here's Team Poland versus kind of some of the best that the rest of Europe has to offer. That's about it. Although Anita Beckis always entertains me. She's not terribly good. I want to be clear on that. Like, she lost to a scarf hold arm lock last time out, but like, I do have fun watching her fights. Anyways, that's all. You guys have fun. You guys enjoy the fights, and I'll see you afterwards to break them down. And as per usual, check out the links in the description wherever you're watching. And the Discord has got some new features on the Fight Sim. Cross promotion. We're quite happy with that. Actually looking for anyone who wants to start a promotion up in the career mode. That would be cool. And with that finished off, I bid you, fine gentlemen and ladies, a good day.